is 4 years since the last Jethro Tull studio album, and during that time there have been 3 or 4 albums released, but not new Jethro Tull studio albums, either reworkings of old things, compilation albums, unreleased material, or this solo album from myself that's just come out recently. I think that there are definitely expectations on the part of the Jethro Tull audience, but the expectations are so wide and so many, because Jethro Tull has so many different audiences within that global bunch of people who will either buy a record or turn up to a concert. It's just all sorts of folks. I mean, you got the ones who think of Jethro Tull as more of a rock band, or even a hard rock band. And particularly in America, that would be the case. In the USA and certain cities of America, you're aware that the audience have much more in the way of expectation for the rock and roll element of what we do. Whereas in other places, you sense more interest and response from the acoustic or whatever side of the music. It really is so different, and it's very dangerous, I think, to try and, particularly with us, but really for anybody, to try and fulfill the expectations of the audience, because you've almost certainly got it wrong. Whatever you think it is they want, you've probably got it wrong. It's not what they want at all.
Wake hard in the morning, see the young girl milking, stream rushing by on a bed of stone.
Since I started working at home, I find it a lot easier, from my point of view, to coax out of myself the kind of performance that would be difficult for me in the studio. My natural reticence as a musician, my shyness, however ridiculous that may sound, is something that can only be overcome by working effectively alone. And I've got so used to doing that over the last few years that anything else fills me with horror. It's a different thing altogether when you walk out on stage to do something live. That is a whole different deal. That is performance, and that doesn't fill me with nerves or worry about doing it. It's just a different thing. It's a whole different way of making music. But the idea of playing to an audience of 1 or 2 or 3 people just scares the hell out of me. A few thousand people is okay.
No excuses for the work weary, no excuses for who I am.
Perhaps one of the biggest differences is probably more flute playing on this album than any other Jethro Tull album, partly as a result of having done an album last year, although only just relatively recently released, which was an instrumental flute album. So I reacquainted myself with the instrument to the extent of feeling that I'm playing it better. And by better, I mean with a bigger range of expression. For me, I've really got quite keen on playing the flute again, and it's one of those things that, having always had a decorative function within Jethro Tull, it's nice to push it a little bit more to the fore, although something has to make room for it. And so sometimes a bit of elbowing Martin out of the way to let the flute sort of have a more dominant role, or pushing the keyboards aside, or but I think I should be allowed to do that. One of the more recent tracks that we recorded, or the last tracks recorded for the album, a piece called Rare and Precious Chain, is a sort of, again, redefining of that slightly more sort of Eastern feel. In fact, it started off actually being much more bluesy, but then as is so often the case, you can just change one note in the melody and suddenly it does something else. And then somebody else comes in with a reaction to that in terms of a particular sound or a percussion sound or something, and suddenly it all starts to gel, you know, and that's great fun when that happens. What you don't want to end up with is something that sounds like you're, and I don't mean this unfairly to anybody else, but you don't want it to sound as if you've suddenly jumped into bed with a bunch of Arab musicians, or you're trying to authentically recreate the sound or the musical structure of somebody else's culture. There's just not much point in doing that, just as there was not much point in me, you know, blacking up and pretending to be Muddy Waters. I've always written most of the music I've ever done, I think, while I've been on tour. There are very few albums, a few songs, but very few albums, if any, where it's really all been written in rehearsal or in the recording studio or at a time, you know, in a domestic context prior to recording. It's nearly always composed in good part of lots of snippets of things that are dressing room ideas or hotel room ideas. And therefore, part of that sort of relationship that you tend to have, albeit with a rather distorted real world, it is a real world nonetheless. When you're out on the road, you're traveling around, you're meeting people, you're seeing different places. And it's not necessarily the subject material, but it's the way in which you approach it, the way in which you see it is with perhaps a bit more objectivity than you might find if you're ensconced in your cozy domestic atmosphere when, quite frankly, there's probably not a lot to write about and not a great deal of will to sit down and do that sort of thing.
And on the sidewalk, I'm staring at the rain. Walking up the street, yeah, and walking down again. And my feet are tired.
I really like the idea that, you know, as a writer, you instinctively, after a while, will try to build in that little bit of, that little nebulous quality that gives people the opportunity to hear it their way. Because that's the magic for them, is the sense of them saying, yeah, I know what he's getting at here, or I understand exactly what that's about. And of course they don't. They can never understand exactly what it was to me, but the feeling that they're so sure that they really identify with it is a product of their imagination, a product of their experiences and their views, their sensitivity, their way of listening to the music coming together with you, the writer, or the performers in the band. You know, you somehow meet people halfway. It comes off the page and into the atmosphere in a way that, you know, has that buzz about it. And good old thing to be doing for a living. And, you know, well, as long as the money's right.